Welcome to LollieTasking. I invite you to join me and other amazing and inspiring women discussing our passion, work, discovering our purpose, interesting topics, and how we seem to have it all together. I hope we can motivate you and show you you can do it too with some planning, a little bit of balance, and a dash of determination. This is LollieTasking. Welcome to another inspiring episode of LollieTasking. I am your host, Dr. Lola. And on today's show, we have with us Mrs. Tinuke Fawole of Parenting in the Diaspora, which is a YouTube show I want you all to go check out. She's a mother of 4 wonderful adult children. Of one of them is my personal little sister, Finye, and 2 amazing son-in-laws. She's an author of a book called Master of My Destiny and is a criminal law and child welfare law attorney. She's also co-owns Optimum Parenting and Optimum Families with her husband, Dr. Alaba Fawole, where they assist couples in building thriving relationships. It is my pleasure to welcome one of my favorite aunties, Mrs. Tinuke Fawole, to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lola. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. So before we get charted with Mrs. Fowler, let's learn to balance our soul in 5 minutes. In our soul section today, we have chosen to learn about a woman in the Bible, Sarah. So Sarah, if you want to learn about Sarah, you can go ahead and read from the Holy Bible, Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 20, 61 to 8. You can also read chapter 17 and chapter 18 to kind of get the full picture, and also chapter 21. So first of all, as you all know, I'm Nigerian, and name means a lot to us. Sarah's name means princess, but before her name was changed to Sarah, her name was also Sarai, which meant quarrelsome. And knowing the meaning of her name kind of gives you a little bit of idea of the kind of personality she may have had back in the day. Sarah, as we all know, is the matriarch of the Bible. At 65 years old, God told her and her husband to move to Canaan because he was going to bless them with children and bless them with financial things, which God did. As we know, she was very beautiful. She had everything. They had money, or the equivalent of money, I would say. But her number one desire was to have children. She was barren at this time and had probably given up, like when she was close to 90 years old, when God came up and told her, Sarah, you're going to have a child, and your child is going to be Abraham and Sarah are gonna have a child, and your children will basically be a huge nation. And as me, I'm looking at Sarah and thinking, I'll probably be like, I don't care about being a mother of all. I just want one child. That's probably what she was thinking. And at that point in time, she's so old. And she's thinking to herself, well, God actually spoke to Abraham, like Abraham and God have this personal relationship. Maybe it's not through me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe God just told Abraham, you're going to be a father of nation. Maybe it's through my slave. And if we look at the historical context, I love history too. So I went back and looked at the historical context of slaves back in the day. Back in the day, if you're a slave, you're a property of your master. And slaves were seen as surrogates, like when we think of surrogates today having children. And it wasn't unheard of that a barren mom, a barren woman would give her slave to her husband. And actually, it may even be the opposite, that people are looking at Abraham like, why haven't you married another wife? Why haven't you slept with your maid? What's wrong with you, But Abraham kind of stuck to God and his promises. So this is where everything went all right. Sarah gave Agar to Abraham, and till today, there is still that big divide between the Arabs and the Israelites, which was secondary to Sarah's lack of patience. Okay, I want to read this verse to you all because this verse stuck out to me when I was reading this about Sarah. Genesis chapter 18, verses 13 to 14. It said, and the Lord said to Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? And then verse 14 says, is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Sarah had a child at 90 years old. We all know how the story ended.
Mhm.
So the main thing I took out of this is waiting on God. God's time is the best, no matter what circumstances is. When we try to help God or do God's work, that's when we mess up everything.
Yeah.
So does your heart long for anything impossible to be possible? We're part of a story, a bigger storyline, and we need to remember that. So with that being said, what do you think about this, Nancy?
Well, actually, thank you. I love this story. And as I was reading it one time, something actually occurred to me. When God made that promise, it took 25 years after God made that promise for it to come to pass. That's
Yep.
incredible. Like,
Mhm.
you're going to have a child from
Mhm.
God's mouth. But
Mhm.
then the realization of it took 25 years. So, how long have you been waiting? It doesn't mean that God didn't hear. It
Right.
doesn't mean that it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you didn't go into the place of where the child actually came to pass, but
Right.
yeah, but the fact that even though the promise had been made at this time, 24 years, it was when Sarah actually had these visitors. Sarah and Abraham had these three
Mhm.
visitors who came, and Sarah went and took care of them and,
Right.
just fed them and was hospitable. When
Right.
the angels were leaving, they now said, next year at this
Right.
time, the child
Right.
will come. So to me, it looked like the promise that had been in a package just became activated from the hospitality. So
Ah, I like
I took this
that. I like
from that
that.
story.
I,
Yeah.
I think I think it's so amazing that you say that because sometimes when we long for something, when we think that the impossible is impossible, right? It's finally when we give up and we just start doing our own, right? At
Amen.
that time,
Hmm.
she probably just gave up. And you know what, God, if you do it, do it. you
Exactly.
know? And
Hmm.
she was just doing her own and just being the nice person that she was. And God was like, okay, I think it's time to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I hope whoever listens to this, whatever it is you may be going through that's impossible, know that God's time is the best and He will make it happen at His appointed time.
Amen.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes,
I,
ma'am.
I went through Sarah's experience for a very short period, for 3 years. We
Okay.
didn't know why. We didn't know why we were married, and we didn't have any children. It was actually one of the reasons we came to the United States, because everyone was like, "Oh, go to America. Everything is possible there." But then on getting to America, first of all, we saw so many people that were also barren that,
Mhm.
they couldn't do anything about it. And at that time, it was when they had this pre-existing condition. We couldn't have any
Insurance.
insurance look
Yeah.
into it until we had been on it for 12 months. And
Mhm.
then when we came, we were doing media jobs. We didn't even have the kind of jobs that we will have insurance anyway. So we were
Right.
just like, you know what? It's on you now, Lord. We can't even access the medical care if we wanted to. And it was at
Right.
that point God just did it.
God did
So
it.
so now I can't even
Wow.
mention any doctor's name or anything because he did it all by
It
himself.
was it
So
was Dr. God.
Dr. Jesus, yeah, yeah, yeah. So he'll do it for you. Just wait.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Ma. So, in getting to our topic for today, our topic of today is raising arrows. Like, how do we raise well-balanced children in
Mhm.
this world that we're in right now? But before I get started, I kind of talked a little bit about, who you are and what you do. But I just want the listeners to hear from you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about starting your businesses and also the YouTube channel that Parenting in the Diaspora.
Okay. So I describe myself as a redeemed child of God. I'm
Okay.
happily married and enthusiastically in love with my husband,
I
my
love
college
it.
sweetheart, Alaba. And you've already said that we're blessed with 4 children, and God has added two more sons
Hmm.
for us. I'm an attorney, and it was actually while I was practicing as a criminal law attorney in the juvenile section that I started encountering immigrant children and their parents.
Hmm.
So the children were getting in trouble, and when I would speak to the children, I saw the disconnect, I saw the anger, I saw all that they were feeling, even against their parents, and the parents were frustrated. And it really, really made me sad. And I would
Mm,
come home and talk about it, and it was weighing so much on my heart because we had the privilege of raising children here too. And, by God's grace, we didn't have these serious, challenges with our children. So I was feeling like, I mean, this can be done. It doesn't have to be like this. And I kept talking about it. And my husband was like, so what are you going to do about it? What are
right.
you going to do about it? He kept asking me. And that's how parenting in diaspora came about. So I'm passionate about reconciling parents and children, especially us immigrant families, because we do face peculiar challenges that's not
Mhm.
common to the rest of the population. I'm also an author of the book Master of My Destiny. And my personal mission statement is to encourage and empower. And this stems from my strong belief that God has already made available all that we need to succeed in all areas of life. And
Mhm.
so, as I encourage people, I also empower them to take charge of their lives because they can. And that's what inspired the book, Master of My Destiny. And
Right.
I'm an active member of my church and my community. And in my free time, I enjoy traveling, entertaining, and spending time with my family. The Lord has blessed my husband and I to be able to speak on family issues and minister in different churches, conferences, organizations all throughout the United States. We've gone to the United Kingdom, we've gone to the Caribbean, and we also
Hmm.
minister in Nigeria. So
Oh wow, that's
that's it for now.
awesome. So as you guys can see, there's nobody else I feel is better equipped to discuss this. And I remember telling my mom like a year ago, I was like, you know what, mommy, one of the hardest thing I've ever done. Everybody knows I'm a physician. We work so hard. I've taken all this tests. I've even get one of the hardest thing I've ever done is to become a parent.
Mhm.
It gives you a newfound respect of all the things my mom went through. And I go to the Bible a lot when I want to sick, because that's one thing my mom taught me to, like just go
Mhm.
to the Bible. And one thing I read was in Psalm 127, it said, children are a heritage of the Lord, offsprings a reward from him, like
Mhm.
arrows in the hand of a warrior, or children born in one's youth.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, so you're telling me to raise arrows, and I know you've heard that too.
Oh yeah.
Um, what does it mean to raise arrow? Let's even get to that. What is it? What does it mean to raise arrows to you?
Well,
To you, what does that mean to you?
well, I actually thought about that phrase before for a book that I was, writing on parenting. To me, it says, the verse goes on to say that as arrows are in the hand of, a mighty man, so are children in the hand of the youth. So that
Right.
lets me know that when you raise children who are balanced in all areas of their lives, who can go out there and make something out of their own lives and then impact lives around them. And arrows are sometimes used for fighting in the Bible. So you
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
children who are going to grow up to be able to defend themselves and defend you and defend the legacy that you have given unto them. So
Right.
strong children, balanced children, successful children. And success to me, I've always said it, success to me means a balance in your spiritual, emotional, social, and mental areas. If I had a child who came to me who has a PhD and comes home to tell me that he doesn't believe in God, I'll be devastated. It would be like you really
Right.
never went to school because the Bible says a fool has said in his heart there is no God. So that balance. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but how do you do it? How do you
Okay.
raise balanced kids? Let's get into the nitty gritty of it.
Okay. Okay. My husband and I always say, I think what has helped us is that God helped us to find a balance between love and discipline.
Mm,
Love and discipline. You have to find that balance. And love involves a lot. Children actually spell love as Time. You got to have time for
right.
your children and quality time that you do, XYZ. We can talk about that. And you have to discipline your children. You cannot leave your children to just discipline themselves. It's like having a child and you say, well, I'm not going to brush my child's teeth. I'm just going to let them wait until 21 or 18 and they decide whether they want to brush their teeth or not. Well, by the time your
Right.
child is 16, there will be no tooth to brush because it will have all
Exactly.
fallen off because you didn't take care of it. And so, and I think what we did to give ourselves time is that in our busy schedules, and we had some seriously busy schedules,
Mhm.
but we had our priorities in that we sat with our children for family devotion for the most part 2 times a day. If we could
Okay.
not do two
Wow.
times a day, we at least did one time.
Mhm.
And when we had devotions, it wasn't a druggery, we're just here, everybody's just laid back and bored. It was an active time. We used devotionals that were geared towards their ages. I remember a particular one we used, it was called Sticky Situations. I really loved it because it would create a scenario and give different options as to what will you do in this situation.
Hmm.
And we went through that as a family. People gave their ideas on what should be done, and so we had a discussion. And so we spoke with our children spoke with us, and that happened every day. That's powerful, that your children
Wow.
can actually have conversation with you about issues of life every day, and
Right.
then from the spiritual
Right.
point of view. So I think that really did it, the fact that we had time to spend with them in the word of God. We were not perfect parents, but whenever we didn't do what was right, at least over the years, God helped us to be able to apologize. It wasn't easy in the beginning for,
Mhm.
where we come from, but we
Right.
learned to be able to do that. So I think balancing the love that we have for them, spending time with them, doing things with them, and then giving them discipline when they needed to be disciplined, they understood that it was coming from a place of love. So in a nutshell, I would say it's that balance.
Yeah, I think, looking back now, and like I always tell my husband, I probably can count the number of times my parents spanked me, maybe like 2 or 3 times, but I could look back and say I deserved it those times, right? And I was one of those children that as soon as I even think they're gonna spank me, I sat up. Like I wasn't
Amen.
a very rebellious child.
Exactly.
So I know someone's probably listening, but like, listen, like I try to discipline my child, but they don't listen. How do you deal with those kind of not necessarily, I don't want to say rebellious all the time. Like sometimes it's
Mhm.
not rebellion. It may just be seeking attention. They just want something. Like how do you discipline those kind of children?
Okay. That's hard when it hasn't been done from the beginning. So
Mm,
I will talk about the question you asked me, but I'm just encouraging if you're just starting to raise children, it's not too early to discipline them. I mean, obviously, the severity of the discipline and the type of discipline is different. So, and my mom always said that when she was with us in the beginning to take care of our first child, she said, when she saw my husband discipline our first child, she'll be like, oh my goodness, how old is this child that she's getting disciplined? So it's not too early. And I believe if you start early, it lets the children know that the parents are not playing, so they don't even go there. And
right.
I see that in my church. I see the difference between parents who have control and parents who don't.
Mm,
And you can see it in the children. Like a mom who's not going to take it, I see them come to the child, look at the child, talk to the child, and I see the child behave. And all their
right.
children. I know that every child is different, but if you
Mhm.
as a parent is one way, it's difficult for the child to just say they're going to do their own thing because they have not learned to just be able to do their own thing. But
Mhm.
let's get to things haven't happened. Maybe you haven't had the cooperation of your spouse and things happen. There may be a parent that wants to do it. The other parent might not feel so inclined, so you are not in agreement. Or
Yeah.
you might have parents who don't even stay together, and that's hard because then something happens in one home and another thing happens in another home.
Right.
So I acknowledge that there are times when you try and there are still problems. So in that situation, you pray for that child. That's always the first thing.
Mhm.
You spend time with that child when everything is going well to find out exactly what's going on. The child might be in pain. There might be something that's going on that's causing the child to say that. So you give the child the opportunity, to find out what may be going on. But then at the end of the day, you still have to put in what you have to put in form of
Right.
discipline, to let the child know that for the child's sake, you have to be in
Mhm.
control at this point. And if it's a situation that's totally, you just don't know how to handle it, I mean, that's part of what I do. I do parent coaching. So
Okay.
I can coach, parents through steps to actually implement. If you have a child that's already, giving you trouble here and there, I help with that. Sometimes you need more than just hearing things. Sometimes you need the
Mhm.
skills and the
Right.
tools that
Right.
at this point I need to do something. And, I help with that.
Right. I think a lot of it is also knowing when to ask for help. Because a lot of people, like, there are so many books out there, but like every child is different. And being able
Yes,
to come to someone like you who's a coach, you can individualize it to that person. You mentioned
exactly.
something that was very important. You said sometimes the parents may not be seen eye about the discipline, like they're not in a united front. Like, what do
Yes.
you do in that situation? There's some stories I hear from some of my friends who the dad is very strict. Like,
Hmm.
he disciplines on everything. The mom then goes way opposite, doesn't discipline at all.
Yeah.
Or one is in another household, one is in, like, how do you kind of get that united front to make sure that this is about the child? Let's come
Okay.
together for the child.
Okay. And I'll start with where you ended. This is about the child. Let's come together and talk
Right.
about the child. Let's start from the parents that live in the same household and have the same mentality about discipline. And one of the things I do in my coaching is the first thing is self awareness. Before you can be a parent, you have to be really aware of who you are and why you are who you are. So, two parents having two totally parenting discipline styles, it's probably from how they were raised
Right.
or, their personalities and stuff. So, when you see that contrast in the way you parent, parents really need to come together and talk about it, talk about us. Like, this is how I do it, and this is how you are doing it. We need to find a balance.
Mhm.
But going the two opposite directions, you are basically destroying the child. You are giving the child a way out because you are not in agreement.
Right.
So it's very important to be in agreement. Now, if you have one spouse that is the disciplinarian, as long as they are not overboard to like abuse,
Right. Right.
you the other one that is so liberal, you just have to swallow sometimes. You can talk about it after that. I know our child did something wrong, but I think you went a little bit over.
Too.
Can
Right.
you just try not to do, but never in the front of the child,
Mm.
and never letting the child know that you are, you know
You felt that way.
that you felt that way, because again, at the end of the day, you are not going to effect the discipline that you want, because the child is gonna find a way out because you are not in agreement.
Right.
I always give my own example. In our case, it's funny. Both my husband and I are disciplinarians, but my husband is more. So when there was a time that my husband was away for 16 months for study, and he would come home every month. Before he left, we had this thing with our children. I don't have to count one, two, three. If I say it once, you obey. And
Mhm.
and they were doing that. But then when my husband went away, I now had children. I'll tell them to do something, and he would be like, no one is saying anything. They just be
Ah.
doing their own thing. I'm going to the store with four children, and everybody just going out. I'm like, oh, excuse me.
Oh,
Oh, okay. So
wow.
that's what you do to me because I
Right.
seem to be less. So since then, honestly, it was a wake up call for me. Since then, when my husband would try to discipline, I did not try to get in the way. It's like, let him do his own thing, and let me do it how I know, but I didn't
Right.
try to dilute what he was doing. Now, for people who live in two different households, maybe separated or whatever, again, you just always have to remember that it's about the child. So
Right.
if there is a rule that has been established in a home, you should communicate that. This is when, they need to go to bed. This is when something needs to happen. And I know I plead with couples all the time. I know you may be mad at each other, but you have to be unselfish and humble if you want a good result for that child in the future. Because you might win the war with your spouse and be the one to have the say. But if you end up having a child who you will not be proud of, or a child who will end up destroying themselves and be unhappy,
Right.
then you will have lost the battle and it would not have been worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like coming on United Front, unfortunately, sometimes when things are going on with couple, they kind of lose sight of that importance. Like
Hmm.
I tell people, no matter what is going on with you guys, never have the kid suffer the consequences, right?
Yes,
Like you
yes,
always
yes,
have to think about the children as number one. And the thing
yes,
is, like, children are very smart. If they know that this
extremely.
one, this parent doesn't do this, well, they're gonna try that parent, and like
Yes,
the other parent would not be helping the situation if you're not both united. But if they know, listen, nothing can get past my parents, they see the little
exactly,
bit tighter. Okay, let's bring
exactly.
it back to our culture.
Hmm.
So I moved here when I was younger, so I kind of consider myself first generation immigrants.
Hmm.
And if you look at, there's a lot of study that has shown that, well, I guess I'll be second generation because mom moved here and then. But anyway, so
Exactly.
there's a lot of studies that have shown that third generation immigrant, like our children, like
Hmm.
like our generation, we do very well, right? Because
Yes,
we
yes.
have the strength, a lot of
Hmm.
us studies have shown like we don't grow up with much, right? But
Yes,
then we do
exactly.
what we need to do, and then a lot of my friends are successful and doing well for themselves.
Hmm.
How do you raise third generation children that are not entitled, or because that's what I like the study does show, like you don't do as
Hmm.
well as
Hmm.
like my generation are doing. And that's one of my biggest fear. Like I felt like growing up, one of the things that motivated me was because I knew, okay, I got to do this to get this, right?
Yeah,
But like my children almost, I mean, they don't get everything they want, but they get a lot of things they want, right? So like,
yeah,
how do we raise the children to, one, not be entitled, and two, just be as balanced as we were growing up?
yes. And so you have to simulate as much as you can and artificially create what you had growing up.
Mm,
And first, you have to know that honestly, much of how we grew up was good. There might have been extremes, but it really helped us. So we shouldn't necessarily think that, oh, we're in a better place and we're just going to embrace everything. We always told our children, whatever is good in America, we'll embrace it. Whatever
right.
is not good, we are rejecting it. So I think the reason that you guys are successful, your generation, is because your parents, us, we didn't grow up in America. So we came with the same mindset that we grew up with. And that's how we naturally just raised our children. Like we had expectations, and that's big. We
Right.
had expectations. Growing up in church, if you were given a memory verse, you memorized it.
Mhm.
When I started going to American church, children would grow up there and be reading their one verse memory verse. But we made our children, no, you don't read memory
You
verse. That's why it's
memorize
called
it.
memory verse. You
Memory.
memorize it. And because of that expectation, they were able to read maybe even chapters because they were, that's just the only way. So placing expectations on our children, that's what our parents did. That's what we did for you. So you have to have expectations on your children, not just allow them to just slack off. And then the things that I said you have to create. Growing up in Nigeria, there were some things that you had no control over, that was just a hardship that you had to do for yourself. There wasn't
Right.
dishwashers, so you had to wash the dishes. There were things you had to do. There's no reason why you cannot do that here. The only time we used dishwashers with our children was when we had large number of visitors and it was just so many dishes to wash, and they would still
Right.
end up still washing the pots and all of that. So creating, letting your children work hard even in the home, letting them have chores that they have to do, commensurate with their ages. One day we were cleaning the house, and my son and daughter, the last two, they were home and they were working so hard, and I was saying, you guys, I appreciate the fact that you work so hard, but please make sure that when you have your own children, you let them work hard too. There's a moment that you don't have to worry about it. We're going to make them work hard like you made us work. So I think not to create a sense of entitlement.
Right.
Let your children work hard. Don't do everything for them because they can. They have the ability, they have the strength. Let them wash dishes, sweep the floor, mop the floor, cut your lawn when they're old enough to do it, wash the car when they're old enough to do it, help you out. Don't just let them sit like kings and queens at the table while you bring the food to them. No,
Mhm.
they can, like we taught our children when we finish eating, they will come and take our place. They all were born in the United States.
Right.
And I know that I was encouraged about that when I saw my aunt first. My aunt is a nurse, and I saw that when she would be getting ready to go to work, one child will iron her uniform, another child will pack her lunch, and I was like,
Wow.
this can happen in the United States. And that's when I
Right.
got the encouragement that it is really what your children are going to do is really within your four walls. It's what you teach them. And then to let them have delayed gratification. Many of you are more prosperous than us, your parents, but that doesn't mean that you give your child everything they ask for. If you don't think they need to have it, then don't. And if you need to just control what they need to have, you need to, and the children will understand. My daughter told me the story of one time when one of her friends in school got to know the profession of my husband and I. And they told her, oh, that means you can have whatever you want. And she told them, you don't know my parents. And I was like, wow, that's a compliment if you don't know it,
Right,
that we're not just
right.
going to give you everything. So you just have to create what you grew up with, do the same with your children, and you will get the same results.
Wow. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's so hard sometimes because as parents, you want the best for your kids, and you
Hmm.
want to see them happy, you want to see them smile, and just holding back and just being like, I mean, like now, for example, we did a rule where they can't have toys except for Christmas and their birthdays. No matter what. Like they can beg from today to, is it your birthday? No, you can't have it because, like, do they really need it? They have a lot of
No,
toys.
exactly.
That's just like one of the things that like we're working on. And I really do agree on the delayed gratification. So speaking about balancing in America or as immigrants, because not everybody that listens to this are Nigerian,
Hmm.
but as immigrants in America, balancing those two cultures, how
Yeah.
are you able to do it? Because your kids were born here. Um, but they're just as Nigerian or even more Nigerian than some Nigerian kids born in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how are you able to balance them knowing that yes, I'm 100% American, but I'm also 100% Nigerian? How are you able
Yeah.
to do that for them?
Okay. I think you yourself have to be sure of your own identity and proud of your identity. You cannot give what you don't have. So that's the basis.
Amen.
The way you talk about your culture, the way you embrace your culture, and then exposing them to the culture, going to your functions, where they see other people, letting them interact with your friends and their children who are, that is very important. I also know that one time when my children really began to have the understanding, we have this, our church has a yearly youth camp.
Okay.
So it's like a Christian youth camp for Nigerians. And so when all the young people get together, they was, oh, that just sounds like my parent. Oh, so it's not just my parent that does that. So it's comforting. So
Right.
I think at this point they just say, okay, it's a
It is what
Nigerian
it
thing.
is.
It's an immigrant thing. It's not just me. So
Right.
so I think that and also just also trying to, like I said, whatever is good here to appreciate. We didn't try to just pound it down on them. We acknowledge the fact that we're still raising them in a different culture.
Right.
So we can't do everything 100% the way we were raised. For
Mhm.
instance, we need to tell them why we are doing certain things. If we are
Right.
disciplining them and preventing them from doing things, we actually have to explain to them. So we didn't have any problem doing that. We had to learn to apologize to them when we found out that we were wrong. So that way they didn't reject, the culture or the whole notion of being Nigerian
Mhm.
because this is who Nigerians do. So we just try to present it in a positive way and I think expose them to the culture as much as we can. And I think also
Mm.
taking
Taking
them
them
home,
to Nigeria.
taking them to Nigeria. I mean, the first time we went and came back, um, where my second daughter was 4 years old, I think it was 5. They were very young. And I think that also helped. And we came back, and I was teaching the lesson for our church that week was about heaven. And I was teaching them how beautiful heaven was, streets of gold. And all of a sudden, Okwe just blurted out, Mom, is heaven as beautiful as Nigeria? Because Nigeria is the
Okay.
most beautiful place. I'm like, what? That particular trip, we had gone to villages and gone to so ugly places. How is
Right. Oh, well,
Nigeria
you thought
beautiful?
was ugly. She didn't think
Well, I
so.
thought, but apparently she wasn't seeing the physical. You
Right.
know, I got the, I got the explanation from the Holy Spirit that she was thinking about, the love that they experienced everywhere they went. People were carrying them, putting them on their laps, praying for them, to them, because at that time we were living in an apartment in the United States where we didn't even know our neighbor. They couldn't go out to play unless I was there. Everything was restricted. All of a sudden, they got to a place where they could just be outside playing, and everybody loved them. And to them, that was beauty. So I think that also formed a good impression. So I think we should really give our children that experience as soon as possible. So that helps too. Yeah, for
Yeah,
them
I
to
I
embrace the culture.
agree. Another thing I've been working on is also like the language,
Oh yeah,
helping them understand like, why it's important that we speak our language and kind of keeping that culture. And we're working. I think our kids are they're very they're more Nigerian than most Nigerian American kids are because they do understand the balance. Like I said, you're Nigerian and you're also
exactly.
American at the same time.
Yeah, you
Is
keep
there
telling
any
them that too. Yeah.
right? Is there anything else you wanted to add before we round it up?
Well, the language thing that you mentioned is really key, and it is possible. I know couples who are doing that now. We didn't even, our children understand the language, but we really didn't require that they speak it just because we didn't have understanding. We were ignorant. If we had to do it over, that would be the first language because
Right.
they will get the English whether they want or not. So that's another thing that will make them connect. They will, if they speak that language, there's no how that someone can tell them that is not their, it's not their
Exactly.
language. Yeah, so that is key. So I'll just say that we keep the communication line open. We expose them as much as we can to the culture wherever we can. We let them know how proud we are of the culture, and we try to shed whatever things are negative. As beautiful as our
Hmm.
culture is, there are things that are negative that we
Right.
shelve, in raising them so that our children will embrace. And I've discussed a lot of topics on
Hmm.
parenting in diaspora. That's also another place that you can go, the YouTube channel, Parenting in Diaspora. You see all the different topics also that I discussed in what we can do about our children, especially
That
here.
is that is fantastic. Before we round up, I always ask all our guests this 5 questions.
Okay.
Uh, and it's a way to kind of like show people that we all have to be balanced in everything we do. So the number one question is your mom, your wife. I know even though all the kids are out the house, parenting never ends.
Hmm. Yep.
And you're a lawyer, you have so many things going on. How do you just balance everything?
So I think during my day, the only time I have for myself is before everyone else wakes up.
Yep.
So for me, waking up maybe about 2 hours before everyone else wakes up, I get my personal time in with God. And if there are very, very serious things that I need to do, I found out that I'm actually a morning person. It's like what I get done in 2 hours in the morning, I don't get it done in 6 hours during the day because there's just so much distraction.
Right.
And once I can get the first things first, the things that are important to me, my devotion, my specific important things that I need to do, once I can get that in, I'm ready to give myself to the rest of the world the rest of the day because I know that I've done
Exactly.
something. So that's important. That's important for me, and that has helped me. And I actually didn't realize that when my children were growing up, I was just all over the place and I just couldn't get things done. But I think that helps me now. It's funny, my life has not gone less busy that now that the children are out of the house. So that has helped me to keep things in balance, being able to do that for myself here.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree with that. And that's actually how I get people ask me, how do you do this lolly tasking thing? And you're a physician. And I'm like, I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. That's the only way
Mm.
I do it because
Wow.
I have to be able to do what I think is also important. Like this for me gives me joy. I love talking to
Mm.
people. I love doing this. Um, and like you said, the rest of the day, my work has me, my kids have me, my husband has me. But that first 2 hours, I have my God time and I have my lolly tasking time, and then the rest of the day gets it. So I love
Yes.
that you're doing that too. uh,
It
what is
works.
one thing you say renews your mind?
Reading the Bible, and
Hmm.
that's not a cliche. I tell people if you say the Bible doesn't work, it's because you haven't actually opened it. Like open it when it's quiet and you do your devotion. God speaks to you, you get new ideas, you're able to face the world. You get out there and people upset you, you are prepared for that. And also great books, wonderful books. There are, many books that are really inspiring that I read. And I also do positive affirmations, which I learned this from some, coaches. You just stand in the mirror and say, I don't do this as often as I should, but it really works, to stand there and say great things about yourself and how you're going to face
Right.
today and how you're not going to be moved. So, yeah, that helps me.
Yeah. Changing your mindset is very important. What
Hmm.
about your body?
My body, I drink lots of water every day. I advise that everyone should drink at least half their weight in ounces every day. So it's part of my morning routine. I wake up, I do the water for my husband and I. We both have a big jug. I, slice some
Nice.
lemons into it. If I have cucumbers, I add it to it. And we drink that throughout the day. That really, you're a physician, you know the importance of water in
Uh-huh.
the body.
Uh-huh.
And also fruits and vegetables. We all hear it. Fruits and vegetables is good for you. There was a time that fruits would just spoil in my refrigerator. Not anymore. Because if you're about to spoil or it's getting too long, I'll just, freeze it. So I do
Right.
smoothies. I do fruit and
Okay.
vegetable smoothies. And that helps my body. Exercise is good, but I'm very bad at that. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite, but exercise is good, but I'm not good at that. But my water and my fruits and veggies, I do those every day.
I tell people like you could exercise from today till tomorrow. If you don't actually look at what comes in your mouth, you're really not helping because food,
Exactly.
food is yes. I don't want to say exercise is not important. Exercise is
Hmm.
important, but food is actually a lot more important sometimes than exercise because you can actually be active throughout the day by doing things, walking up the
That's
stairs
true.
and doing all that stuff. If you don't have the actual time to take out the exercise, but what you're eating is so important, and I really agree with water and fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
What about renewing your soul? This may go with mine too, but
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, personal devotion, listening to inspirational music, worship music. I mean, that renews my mind. Just even doing things around the house, just listening to that. Sometimes when we wake up while we are getting ready for work, that is going on. That just puts your
right,
mind in a particular
I
place. And then,
agree.
every week, church for me is not when I feel like it's part of my weekly routine. I get recharged, listening to good sermon, good music, fellowshipping with other people. I can't imagine not having that to break my cycle every 7 days. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So
And what's your favorite quote?
I have too many. um, but I'll give one or two. The happiest people don't have the best of everything. They just make the best of everything.
I love
Basically, talking about
that.
attitude is everything. Just
Right.
because you're happy and you're dealing with stuff doesn't mean you don't have issues, but you've just decided,
To make
I'm
the
not going to let that
Auntie,
affect me.
can you
So,
say that one more time? I love it. I love it.
the happiest people don't have the best of everything, they just make the best of everything.
I love it. I love it. I'm definitely going to put that in our show notes. So to summarize, we've talked to Mrs. Fawole for a while now, talking about raising arrows. And what arrows mean is like raising a balanced, well-connected kids. And in doing that, one, we talked about having them spiritually grounded, having knowing when to discipline and knowing when to love them, kind of balancing the two. We talked about raising kids in the diaspora and trying to just give them the best we can without spoiling them or raising entitled children. You could definitely learn more from her. You could connect with her directly. How can people get in touch with you besides going on YouTube?
They can also go on our website, optimumparenting.org, optimumfamilies.org. You could email me T as in Thomas, F as in Frank, at optimumparenting.org. So,
Okay. Awesome. And I'll definitely put all the information in the show note as well.
okay.
And you guys can definitely contact Mrs. Fowley for of parenting tips, coaching, if you want them to come talk not only about parenting but also about, relationships and families
Yes,
and couples as well. She's
yes.
amazing as you can hear, so I thought she'll be great if you do contact her. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us, Ma. It was such a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lola. I really, really appreciate the opportunity.
And for our listener, thank you again for joining us for another inspiring episode of LollieTasking. Like I said, we'll have all the information down below in our show notes. Don't forget to follow us on IG at LollieTasker and also on our website at LollieTasking.com. Till next time, remember, you can do it too with some planning, a little bit of balance, and a dash of determination. This is LollieTasking.
Thanks for hanging out with us on another inspiring episode of LollieTasking. If you have any questions or topics you would like for us to discuss, please contact me via LollieTasking.com, or better yet, you could just send me a direct message on Instagram at LollieTasker. If you've liked what you've heard today, what are you waiting on? Just go ahead and click that subscribe button, rate, and leave a great review on iTunes. And of course, do share with your friends. Till next time, this is LollieTasking.